but it's so much easier if you do it earlier. Just do it by day 15. It's the magic day 15. So then on election day, let's say you're not registered. Again, you can go to your local city or township clerk now and with your proof of residency, and you can register right there on election day, and you have two options then. You can either get an absentee ballot and vote it right there at the clerk's office. And I know it's weird to call it an absentee ballot because you're not absent, you're right there, but that's just the way we talk about it in the law, and we haven't changed that, so we have to keep calling it absentee ballot. Or you can get a receipt that you've registered there, take it to your polling place, and vote at your polling place. It's up to you. One of the great things about our system now is that there's a lot of choice for voters. They do it the way they want to do it. There wasn't an election, well, I don't know if there were any elections in Ogama County on May 7th. There were elections in about 500 and some jurisdictions on May 7th, and this was the first election when Proposal 3 was in effect. And we did have quite a lot of people registering in the last 2 weeks and on election day. There were 700 and some people who registered in the last 2 weeks. 441 of them registered on election day, which for a municipal election is kind of interesting because there wasn't a lot of publicity, I think. I don't think a lot of people knew that the new laws were in effect. So I was very pleased to find that it worked. There really were very, very few problems on May 7th with all these new laws in effect. It went very smoothly. So remember that all registered voters can get an absentee ballot now. So that also means that if your community has a permanent absentee voting list, you can get on that now. Everyone can get on it. It turns out that most of the cities and townships in Ogama County do have a permanent absentee list. There's a couple that don't. Rose City doesn't have one, and Cumming and Richland townships don't have them. This is the information that I've been given. I'm not 100% sure that it's accurate. I'm taking this from a list that the Secretary of State put out, but I've already found that there are some mistakes on it. But so most of this county, you can get on the permanent absentee list. And what that means is that before every election, you will be sent an application for an absentee ballot. It doesn't mean you'll automatically be sent a ballot. It means you'll be sent an application for a ballot. But it just makes it more convenient because you get the application right in the mail, you fill it out, you send it back. You don't have to worry about, finding that application, because the rule still is for absentee voting that you have to fill out an application, and it has to be in writing, and it has to be signed. This is to protect the security of the absentee voting process. So we have to do that for every election, but if you get on the permanent absentee list, then it'll just be one step easier. Are people here on the list? Raise your hand if you're on the permanent absentee list. Oh, well, there's a lot of opportunity here. So you don't even have to have a form for this. You can just call your local city or township clerk to get on the list. Some cities and townships allow you to fill out something online to get on it. And you can, of course, put something in writing. I mean, you can put it on a napkin if you want. There's no special form. And it really makes it more convenient because you'll automatically get that application before each election. And with absentee voting, you also have choices. So you could mail it back. And one of the great things about voting absentee is that you don't have to remember everything. You don't have to remember who you want to vote for. You can have it all candidate literature there. You can sit at your kitchen table and figure out what you want to do. It's a little less stressful than being at the polling place and possibly feeling a little rushed and having people in line behind you. A lot of people prefer to vote from home. But you don't have to mail in the ballot. You can also take it to your local city or township clerk. Or, as I said before, you can do the whole thing in one stop at your local clerk's office. You can go, request the ballot, fill it out right there, and drop it in the box, and you're done. And the ballots are available 45 days before Election Day. So that really means that we have a 45-day period of early voting now. So part of why I'm excited about this is because I think it's going to decrease congestion at polling places. And maybe that's not an issue in the community where you live, but it is an issue in a lot of communities. We have had communities where the lines on Election Day to vote are an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It's crazy. So I'm actually encouraging people, if you're comfortable voting absentee, if that makes sense to you, please do it, because that way the people who really want to come to the polling places on Election Day will be able to vote without as much congestion, without waiting in line, and without it taking so much time. Because again, not everyone has the day off on Election Day. It's not a federal holiday. It's not a state holiday. And even those people may be given time off by their employer to vote, they're not necessarily being paid for that time off. So it's kind of a luxury, actually, to have the time to be able to go to the polling place on Election Day and spend as much time there as you need to spend. For those people who can't do that, there's the absentee, and then hopefully we won't have as much chaos at polling places for them. One of the things I want everyone to remember, though, is that in order for an absentee ballot to count, there's two big requirements. It has to be signed. The outside envelope has to be signed, because that signature is matched with your signature on file to make sure it's you. We don't want to have, fraud like the kind that they had in North Carolina with people filling out absentee ballots for other people. And the clerk has to receive your ballot by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Some people think that if it's just postmarked by Election Day, that will work, but that's not true. The clerk actually has to receive it. And they do go to the post office on Election Day to get all of the mail that's come in on that day. But personally, I don't necessarily always trust the U.S. mail to get my ballot there in time. If I'm voting absentee, which I've had to do in the past because I've been out of town or I was working at a polling place that wasn't my own, I usually take it into my clerk's office just because I want to see it there. Now you can follow your ballot online now. If you vote absentee, you'll be able to track it online and make sure that it actually got there. And if it doesn't get there for some reason, you still do have the option of going on Election Day and filling out a little form that says, you don't want to spoil your absentee ballot, essentially, and vote in person. You have to fill out a little affidavit. The other big thing that is in place now from Proposal 3 is straight party voting is back on the ballot. We had the one election in 2018 where it wasn't because of legislation that had been passed and then a court order, but now that's in the Constitution. The legislature cannot take that away from us. So once again, we can fill in one oval to vote for all the Democrats. We don't have to fill them all. Now, there's also a couple of things that were passed by Proposal 3 that aren't in place yet. The main one is automatic voter registration. We're going to have a system going forward where instead of you being asked at the Secretary of State's office, would you like to register to vote, you're going to be told you are registered to vote unless you decline. So it's a small change, but in other states it has resulted in higher levels of registration. That is not yet in place. The Secretary of State's office is working on that. They hope to have it in place actually by the end of the summer. I don't know if they're going to meet that deadline, but I think we can be pretty confident that that will be in place sometime in 2019. And then the other thing is online voter registration. That actually was not part of Proposal 3. The legislature passed that in 2018. I don't know what got them off the dime on that, but they did. But it's not in place yet. The Secretary of State's office is having a little bit of difficulty with the antiquated computer system that they're using, so it's taking a little bit longer to get that in place than they expected. But again, they're expecting that to be in place in 2019. So that's where we are right now. It really is a very big change, and I think it's going to increase turnout in our elections. I think it has the potential to increase engagement, get more young people engaged. And a lot of the people who registered to vote for the May 7th elections, and remember, these were local municipal elections, mostly school millages. Of those people who registered in the last 2 weeks or on election day, they were overwhelmingly young voters in the 18 to 29 age range. So I'm really hopeful that these reforms that we put into place will increase civic engagement, that we really will get more young people involved. And if they want to wait until the last minute and register on election day, okay, you can do that now. You just have to have your proof of residency. So what I really would like to ask you all to do is spread the word. This is a big educational challenge for us in Michigan. We have to let people know what their new rights are in order for them to exercise their new rights. And it's not always so easy to talk to people about voting. I do think that our current Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, is very invested in the idea of educating voters, and she's going to do whatever she can. And I want to show you, I'm going to pass out, before the May 7th election, the Secretary of State put together this nice little one-page form, flyer, that is actually pretty easy to understand, I think. I think they did a really good job of getting all the information onto one sheet, and it kind of explained what you have to do if you want to register before April 22nd, which was the 15th day for that election, what you want to do, what you have to do if it's April 23rd through May 6th, and then what do you have to do on election day. And they talked about the proof of residency, and they talked about the absentee balloting process. So I would have brought the one for the August election, but they haven't done it yet. They're a little overwhelmed up there. Would you mind?
Sure.
Thank you. So I think we all can really be helpful in making people aware of these great new rights and helping people understand, how does absentee balloting work, and what do I do in order to be able to cast an absentee ballot. And what's that new law about registration? And the Democratic Party is working on putting together a lot of literature that will help people understand this. For the start of canvassing this summer, we've just put together a nice little trifold brochure that's all about getting on the permanent absentee list, and we're going to be putting together more things like this flyer that will explain all the new rules for voters. But it's a lot of information, and it's not something that everyone is immediately excited about. And they don't tend to think of it until right before an election. So the more we can talk about these new rights and get people to focus on them and to understand what they are, I think that will really help in getting people involved in our elections. And I don't have to tell this audience, the 2020 elections are going to be very, very important. And the more people we have participating in those elections, the better it's going to be. So let's go out there and get them interested and help them understand that, yeah, it used to be kind of complicated and difficult to vote in Michigan, but it's not anymore, thanks to you, the voters of Michigan, who passed this in 2018. So I'm happy to answer questions. There's clearly a lot more detail to this. I've kind of just given you the highlights, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes?
The secure boxes that you put your ballots in, how are we securing those to make sure that they're going to get to where they need to be on time? Is there a chain of custody?
Yeah, there's chain of custody. Because remember, you're doing this at the clerk's office. So it's the clerk who has the responsibility for ensuring that those ballots get counted on election day. They don't get counted before election day. What they can do before election day is check the signatures on the outside of the envelope. Yes.
Let me know as a clerk that when you bring that ballot in before election day, that clerk has to initial that you received it and the exact time that you received it on the date.
Yeah, our system is actually quite secure. It really is. You know, the fact that there's 1,520 cities and townships in Michigan, and each one has its own separate election system, and all that, though that can be maddening in some ways, what it means is that it's pretty hard to hack our election system, because you'd have to do it in 1,520 different places. So it actually is a quite secure system. And I've heard so many people say, "Oh, I don't vote absentee because they only count those if the election is close." No, they're always counted. I've watched them being counted. They're always counted. Any other questions? Yes.
Are paper ballots required with the use of the machines, or is it possible they would just be in a computer?
In Michigan, we use paper ballots statewide, and we do have electronic tabulating machines, but there's always the paper backup, which again is a real security feature. The only thing is that for people who are disabled in some way, there is this system that they can use that does involve a screen, but there's paper backup for all of that as well. About making sure that every ballot that can be counted is counted. Yes?
Michigan seems to have quite secure voting regulations. And I know where I vote, we have to show who we are. But I hear in other states, isn't it the same everywhere? Apparently not. Why doesn't the government make it the same all over?
Because there's a constitutional requirement that it be done by the states. That's the way it is. That's how our system is set up. So there are certain things that we cannot do, across the country. But there have been some federal laws passed to standardize some things, like the National Voter Registration Act and the Help America Vote Act. So some of those national laws have impacted all of the states. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated the invitation to be here, and it's great to meet you all.